I stood on that charity gala stage under blinding lights, while my son Trevor held a microphone, announcing to 200 wealthy guests that he was auctioning off his boring dad, starting at $1. Laughter rippled through the ballroom. My face burned with humiliation as cameras flashed. I had raised Trevor alone after his wife died, sacrificed everything for his success, and now he treated me like a joke for entertainment. Then a calm, unfamiliar voice from the back cut through the mockery. I will bid $1 million. The room went silent. 3 months before that humiliating moment, I was sitting in my small living room in suburban Philadelphia, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, when my phone rang. The screen showed Trevor's name, which surprised me. My son rarely called these days, maybe once every few months if I was lucky, usually on Christmas or my birthday. I am Bart, 67 years old, a retired high school history teacher who spent 40 years in the Philadelphia public school system. My home is modest, a 2-bedroom row house in a quiet neighborhood where I know all my neighbors by name. The walls are filled with photos of students from over the years, their graduation pictures and thank you notes reminding me why I chose this profession. Trevor is 32 now, my only child, the center of my world since the day he was born. His mother, Sarah, died of cancer when he was just 12 years old. I remember holding her hand in that hospital room, promising her I would give Trevor every opportunity she would have wanted for him. I kept that promise, even when it cost me everything. After Sarah passed, I worked 2 jobs to keep Trevor in the private school she had researched so carefully. During the day, I taught American history to rowdy teenagers at Lincoln High School. At night, 3 evenings a week, I tutored wealthy students in their suburban homes, helping them prep for their SATs, while my own son did homework alone in our kitchen. Weekends I graded papers and planned lessons. I sold the house Sarah and I had bought together, the one with the big backyard, where we had planned to watch Trevor grow up, and moved us into this smaller place so the money could go toward his college fund. I drove a beat-up Honda Civic for 15 years, wore the same 3 suits in rotation, packed lunches of peanut butter sandwiches while my tutoring students ate catered meals. Every dollar went toward Trevor's future. When he got accepted to Stanford, I was so proud I cried. When the financial aid package came up short, I took out loans and worked summer school to cover the difference. Trevor graduated without a penny of student debt. He launched a tech company at 26, something to do with educational software platforms. I did not fully understand the details, but investors loved it. Within 3 years, his company was valued at $80 million. My son, the boy I raised alone, had become a wealthy tech entrepreneur. But as his bank account grew, the distance between us grew too. He moved to San Francisco 6 years ago and rarely came home. Our phone calls became shorter, more awkward. I would tell him about my book club or the tomatoes growing in my small backyard garden. He would respond with distracted sounds while typing on his computer, then launch into stories about yacht parties and venture capital meetings that felt like a foreign language. So when Trevor called that afternoon, 3 months ago, I was surprised and hopeful. "Dad," he said, his voice energetic in a way I had not heard in years. "I want you to come to San Francisco. My company is hosting our annual charity gala next month. It is a big deal, lots of important people, and I want you there. I want to honor you publicly, for everything you did for me." My heart swelled. Honor me publicly. Maybe Trevor had finally understood. Maybe success had not changed him as much as I feared. Maybe my son was still in there somewhere, remembering the values Sarah and I tried to teach him. "I would love to come," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "Great," he said. "I will have my assistant send you the details. It is going to be amazing, Dad. You deserve this." I hung up feeling lighter than I had in years. I called my sister Martha that evening, told her Trevor wanted to reconnect. She was skeptical. Martha had never warmed to Trevor after he stopped visiting for Thanksgiving 3 years ago, sending expensive gift baskets instead of showing up in person. But I defended him. "He is busy building something important," I said. "He is coming around." The next day, Trevor's assistant, a young woman named Courtney, emailed me an itinerary: first-class flight, suite at the Fairmont Hotel, car service to the gala. I stared at the screen, overwhelmed. Trevor was pulling out all the stops. This was really happening. I flew to San Francisco on a bright Tuesday morning. The flight attendant brought me warm nuts and a glass of wine. I felt out of place in my old khakis and polo shirt, while businessmen around me typed on laptops. But I was happy. My son wanted to honor me. That was worth any discomfort. When I arrived at the Fairmont, Trevor was waiting in the lobby. He looked different than I remembered. sharper somehow, in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. His hair was styled with product. His watch gleamed gold on his wrist. "Dad," he said, shaking my hand instead of hugging me. The gesture felt formal, distant. "Trevor, it is so good to see you." "Yeah, you too. Listen, I am slammed this week, but my assistant Courtney will take care of you. She has your schedule." He handed me a folder. I opened it and saw a detailed itinerary for the next 3 days. Most of it was me on my own, visiting tourist sites or dining alone. The only time with Trevor was the gala itself. "I thought we might spend some time together," I said, trying not to sound disappointed. "We will, at the gala. That is the whole point." He checked his phone. "I have to run. Investor meeting. Courtney will pick you up Thursday night at 7. Wear something nice." He walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the opulent lobby feeling very small and very old. The next 2 days, I wandered San Francisco alone. I rode cable cars, walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, ate clam chowder at Fisherman's Wharf. The city was beautiful, but I felt lonely. I texted Trevor, asking if he wanted to grab lunch. He responded 6 hours later with, "Sorry, too busy." Thursday evening arrived. I put on my Navy suit, the one I had bought 15 years ago for parent-teacher conferences. It still fit, though the style was outdated. I tried not to think about how shabby I would look next to Trevor's wealthy friends. Courtney picked me up in a black town car. She was polite but distracted, scrolling through her phone the entire ride. When we arrived at the venue, a stunning ballroom at the Palace Hotel, she handed me my name tag and pointed toward the entrance. "Mr. Bart, you are part of tonight's entertainment segment. It is on your schedule." Entertainment segment? I looked at the itinerary. There it was, 8:30 p.m., listed under my name, but no details about what that meant. "What exactly am I doing?" I asked. Courtney shrugged. "Trevor will explain everything. Just trust him. It will be fun." She walked away, heels clicking on marble floors. I stood there holding my name tag, feeling a twist of unease in my stomach, but I pushed it down. Trevor said he wanted to honor me. I had to trust my son. I walked into the ballroom, and my breath caught. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings. Round tables dressed in white linen filled the space, each centerpiece a towering arrangement of white orchids and roses. Men in tuxedos, and women in glittering gowns, mingled with champagne flutes, their laughter echoing off gilded walls. I had never felt more out of place in my life. The cocktail hour was torture. I stood near a marble column, sipping ginger ale while people swirled around me in conversations I could not join. Everyone seemed to know everyone else. They talked about stock options and IPOs, about their homes in Tahoe and their kids at private schools in Switzerland. I tried smiling at a few people, but they looked through me like I was invisible. I spotted Trevor across the room, surrounded by a group of young men in expensive suits. His laugh rang out loud and confident. I started walking toward him, but he saw me coming and turned his back, pulling his group deeper into conversation. The message was clear. "Not now, Dad." I retreated to my corner, cheeks burning. A waiter passed with a tray of appetizers, tiny portions of food I could not identify. I took one, something with caviar, and forced it down even though it tasted like expensive salt. A young woman in a red dress approached Trevor's group. I heard her ask, "So Trevor, tell us about your family. Where are you from?" Trevor's voice carried across the room. "Oh, my dad is here somewhere. He was a teacher. Nothing special. Small-town guy, you know. Not really my world." The words hit me like a punch. Nothing special. I had given him everything, and I was nothing special. I found my assigned seat as dinner began. Table 19, in the far corner near the kitchen doors. Trevor sat at table 1, elevated on a platform at the front of the room with the VIP guests. He never looked my way. Dinner was elaborate, course after course of food I barely tasted. My table mates were polite but disinterested, making small talk before returning to their phones. I felt like a ghost at my own son's event. After dessert, the charity auction began. A polished auctioneer in a bow tie took the stage, his voice booming through the sound system. First up, a week at a villa in Tuscany. Bidding started at $10,000. Hands shot up around the room, sold for $47,000. Next came a wine collection from a private Napa vineyard, $23,000. Then a package of Lakers, courtside tickets, $18,000. The amounts being thrown around so casually made my teacher's pension seem microscopic. I watched the spectacle, feeling more disconnected by the minute. This was Trevor's world now, A world where people spent more on a vacation rental than I earned in a year of teaching. Then Trevor himself took the stage. The spotlight hit him, and he grinned, soaking in the attention. He looked so confident, so at ease in front of these people. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, his voice smooth and practiced. "We have raised an incredible amount tonight for digital literacy programs, but I have one more very special auction item. Something truly unique." My heart lifted slightly. Was this it? Was he about to honor me? "Tonight," Trevor continued, "I am going to auction off an evening with someone very special, someone who shaped who I am today." I sat up straighter. People turned, looking around the room, curious. Trevor's grin widened. "I am auctioning off my dad." Confusion washed over me. What did that mean? "Dad, come on up here." Every eye in the ballroom turned to me. I stood slowly, legs shaking, and walked toward the stage. The distance felt like miles. I climbed the steps, and Trevor put his arm around my shoulders. Under the bright lights, I could see the crowd clearly now, 200 faces staring at me. "This is Bart, my father," Trevor announced. He was a high school history teacher for 40 years, very dedicated, very simple life. Tonight, for our charity, I am auctioning off an evening with him. Dinner, conversation, stories about the good old days when a dollar actually meant something. Scattered laughter rippled through the audience. My stomach dropped. This was not an honor. This was something else entirely. Trevor squeezed my shoulder, and I felt the gesture was performative for the crowd. "So what do you say? Let us start the bidding. Who wants to spend an evening with my boring dad? I will make it easy." Starting bid, $1. The room erupted in laughter. Real laughter now, not polite chuckles. Someone in the back shouted, 50 cents, more laughter. I stood frozen under the blazing lights, cameras flashing as people pulled out their phones to record. My face burned, my hands trembled. This was not an honor, this was humiliation. Trevor had flown me across the country, put me in an expensive hotel, brought me to this glittering event, all so he could mock me in front of his wealthy friends. "Anyone?" Trevor said, grinning wider. $1 for an evening with a retired teacher? Come on, it is for charity." More laughter. Someone said, "Does he come with a history lecture?" The crowd loved it. I wanted to run off that stage. I wanted to disappear. 40 years of sacrificing for this man, and he turned it into a joke. I raised him alone, worked myself to exhaustion, gave up everything so he could stand on this stage and treat me like garbage. Trevor looked at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not remorse, something worse. Satisfaction. He was enjoying this, enjoying my pain. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, to end this nightmare. But before I could speak, a voice cut through the laughter from the back of the ballroom. A woman's voice, calm and clear and strong. "I will bid $1 million. The laughter died instantly. The room went completely silent. Every head turned toward the back of the ballroom. Trevor's arm slipped from my shoulders. His face went pale. I squinted past the lights, trying to see who had spoken. A woman walked forward through the crowd. She was around my age, mid to late 60s, with silver hair pulled back in an elegant twist. She wore a simple black dress, tasteful pearls, nothing ostentatious, but the way she carried herself commanded attention. Every eye followed her as she walked calmly toward the stage. Trevor found his voice, though it cracked. "I am sorry. What?" The woman stopped at the front of the room, looking up at both of us. $1 million, she repeated. "I assume that is acceptable for your charity?" The crowd erupted in whispers. $1 million was 10 times the highest bid of the night. Trevor stammered, trying to regain control of the situation. "Ma'am, this was just a light-hearted moment. You do not have to actually." She cut him off, her voice sharp. "I am not joking. I will write the check right now. Your father is clearly worth far more than you realize." She looked directly at me, and her eyes were kind, genuinely kind. "Mr. Bart, I would be honored to have dinner with you." My eyes filled with tears. I could not speak. This stranger, this woman I had never met, had just done something my own son never had. She had seen my worth. Trevor's jaw clenched. I could see him calculating, trapped. He could not refuse a $1 million donation without looking terrible in front of everyone here. His whole carefully constructed image would crumble. He forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Well then, sold. To the generous bidder for $1 million. The room applauded, but the energy had shifted. The joke had backfired. Instead of mocking me, Trevor now looked small and cruel, while this mysterious woman looked noble and generous. She walked up the stage steps with quiet dignity. She extended her hand to me. "Margaret Hartwell, it is a pleasure to meet you properly." I shook her hand, still too overwhelmed to fully process what was happening. She leaned in close and whispered in my ear so only I could hear. "Your son has no idea who you really are, does he?" I shook my head, tears spilling down my cheeks. Margaret pulled back and addressed the crowd. "I look forward to our dinner, Mr. Bart. I believe we will have a great deal to discuss." She guided me gently off the stage. Trevor stood there, frozen, his perfect evening ruined. As we walked toward the exit, Margaret pressed something into my hand. Her business card. I looked down at it. Margaret Hartwell, Chief Executive Officer, Hartwell Educational Foundation. My breath caught. I knew that name. The Hartwell Foundation was legendary in education circles, one of the largest educational charities in America with assets over $300 million. They funded scholarships, teacher training programs, school infrastructure in underserved areas. Every educator in America knew about the Hartwell Foundation. Margaret stopped near the ballroom doors and turned to me. "We need to talk privately. Tomorrow morning. Can you meet me?" "Yes," I managed to say. "Good. There is something you need to know about your son's company. Something important." She handed me a slip of paper with an address. 10 o'clock tomorrow. Come alone." Then she walked away, leaving me standing there holding her card, my mind reeling with 1,000 questions. I barely slept that night. I lay in the hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the gala over and over in my mind. Trevor's cruelty, the crowd's laughter, Margaret's $1 million bid, her whispered words. "Your son has no idea who you really are." What did that mean? And what did she need to tell me about Trevor's company? At 9:30 the next morning, I took a cab to the address Margaret had given me. It was a quiet cafe in Pacific Heights, upscale but not showy, the kind of place where serious conversations happened over good coffee. Margaret sat at a corner table, reading a newspaper. She looked up when I entered and smiled warmly. "Mr. Bart, thank you for coming." I sat across from her, hands folded nervously on the table. "I should be thanking you for what you did last night. I still do not understand why, but thank you." She set down her newspaper and looked at me with serious eyes. "I did it because your son needed to learn a lesson, and because I meant what I said. You are worth far more than he realizes." A waiter brought coffee. I wrapped my hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to hold. Margaret took a breath. "I need to tell you something difficult. I have been investigating your son's company for the past 6 months." My stomach dropped. "Investigating?" "Yes. The Hartwell Foundation funds educational programs nationwide. We focus on underprivileged students, giving them access to quality learning tools and opportunities. 3 months ago, Trevor pitched his company to us as a potential partner. He claimed his educational software platform was revolutionary, that it would help low-income students access quality education at a fraction of traditional costs. He presented impressive statistics, glowing testimonials, beautiful marketing materials." She paused, her expression darkening. "My team did due diligence. We always do. What we found was deeply disturbing. Trevor's company is essentially a fraud, Mr. Bart. The educational platform he sells barely functions. Schools pay thousands for licenses, but the software is poorly designed, full of bugs, nearly unusable. Teachers and students struggle with it, get frustrated, abandon it. But the contracts are written, so the schools cannot get refunds." I felt sick. That cannot be right. Trevor would not. Margaret opened a folder and slid documents across the table. Financial records, budget breakdowns, email chains. I forced myself to look. "Out of every dollar Trevor's company takes in," she said quietly, 90 cents goes to executive compensation, luxury expenses, and investor dividends. Only 10 cents actually goes toward product development or student services. And even that 10 cents is mismanaged. The company employs a tiny development team, pays them poorly, ignores their feedback about fixing the software. Meanwhile, Trevor pays himself a salary of $4 million a year. He bought a beach house in Malibu for $8 million. He owns 4 sports cars, all while telling foundations like mine that he is dedicated to helping disadvantaged children. My hands shook. I picked up one of the emails. It was from Trevor to one of his executives. The subject line read, "Quarterly projections." I read his words. "We need to squeeze more revenue from the current contracts. These schools signed 3-year deals, so we have them locked in. Ignore the complaints about bugs. By the time the contracts expire, We will have moved on to new clients. The sob stories about poor kids are not our problem. Our problem is hitting our revenue targets, so we can close the next funding round and I can finally buy that yacht. I dropped the paper like it burned me. This could not be my son. The boy I raised alone, the boy I sacrificed everything for, would not write words like this. But the email header showed Trevor's verified company address, his signature at the bottom. There are dozens more like this, Margaret said gently. Trevor built his company on a lie. He takes money intended for children and spends it on himself. He is not a tech entrepreneur. He is a con artist in expensive suits. Why are you telling me this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Because I am going to expose him. Publicly. My foundation is filing complaints with the Federal Trade Commission and the Securities and Exchange Commission. We have documentation of fraud, breach of contract, misrepresentation to investors. Trevor's company will be destroyed. He will likely face criminal charges. I wanted you to know before it happens. The room spun. My son. A criminal. My son, who I raised to be honest and kind. Stealing from children. Margaret reached across the table and took my hand. I saw how he treated you last night, Bart. That was not a momentary lapse in judgment. That was who he has become. Maybe who he always was, but you were too close to see it. You gave him everything, and he turned it into arrogance and cruelty. Tears burned my eyes. I tried to defend him. He was not always like this. When he was young, he was sweet. He cared about things. After his mother died, he learned he could manipulate you, Margaret said, not unkindly. You were grieving, exhausted, trying to be both parents. He saw your guilt and used it. You said yes to everything because you wanted to make up for his mother being gone. And he never developed empathy because he never had to. Everything came easy because you made it easy. Her words hurt because they rang true. How many times had I excused Trevor's behavior? When he skipped his grandmother's funeral because of a college party, I told myself he was young and grieving in his own way. When he stopped calling after I helped him with his startup seed funding, I told myself he was just busy. When he sent gift cards instead of visiting for holidays, I told myself it was the thought that counted. I had enabled him, made excuses, refused to see what he was becoming. What happens now? I asked. Margaret released my hand and sat back. In 2 weeks, we go public with our findings. Major news outlets are already interested. Trevor's company will collapse. But before that happens, I want to offer you something. She pulled out another folder and slid it across the table. You spent 40 years as a teacher, shaping young minds in Philadelphia's public schools. You are, by all accounts, beloved by your students. I called Lincoln High School yesterday. They still talk about you there. Students from 20 years ago still send you letters. I blinked. How did you know that? I do my research. Margaret smiled. The Hartwell Foundation is launching a new program to train teachers in underserved communities. We need someone with real classroom experience, someone who understands struggling students, someone with integrity and passion. I want to hire you to run this program. The salary is $200,000 per year. 3-year contract, full benefits, and you would work from Philadelphia so you would not have to relocate. The job starts in 1 month. I stared at her. $200,000. I had never earned more than $58,000 in my highest paid year of teaching. Why would you do this for me? I asked. Because you are exactly who Trevor pretended to be, she said simply. Someone who actually cares about students. Someone with experience and wisdom. And because last night I saw something in you that moved me. Dignity under humiliation. You stood on that stage, and even when your son betrayed you, you did not lash out. That takes character. I want that character in my foundation. I could not speak. This was more money than I had ever dreamed of. A chance to do meaningful work again. To be valued. But there is one condition, Margaret said, her expression serious. Before I go public with my findings about Trevor, you have the choice to warn him. You can tell him what is coming. Give him a chance to resign, to try to make restitution, to avoid criminal charges. Or, you can let me proceed without warning him. It is your decision. He is your son. The weight of that choice crushed me. Warn Trevor, and possibly help him escape justice, or stay silent and watch his life implode. I looked at Margaret. What would you do? If he were my son? She paused. I do not know. But I know this. Protecting someone from the consequences of their actions is not love. Sometimes real love means letting them fall, so they can finally learn to stand on their own. I took the folder with the job offer. I need time to think. You have 48 hours, she said. After that, I move forward regardless. I left the cafe feeling like my entire world had cracked open. Everything I thought I knew, everything I believed about my son and my sacrifices, was built on sand. I walked through San Francisco for hours, Margaret's words echoing in my mind. The documents in that folder felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. By evening, I knew what I had to do. I called Trevor that night. He answered on the 5th ring, his voice sharp. "What do you want, Dad? I am at dinner. I need to talk to you. In person. It is important." He sighed dramatically. "Can it wait? I am in the middle of something." "No, it cannot wait. Tomorrow morning. Your office. Please." Something in my tone must have registered because he paused. "Fine. 9 a.m. But I only have 30 minutes. He hung up without saying goodbye. I barely slept again. I kept seeing those emails, Trevor's words about sob stories and locked-in contracts. My son, the person I loved most in the world, was a stranger. The next morning, I took a cab to Trevor's office building in the financial district. It was a sleek glass tower, the kind with modern art in the lobby and espresso machines on every floor. His company occupied the entire 20th floor. I gave my name to the receptionist, a young man with perfect hair who barely looked up from his computer. "She will let Mr. Trevor know you are here." 20 minutes later, he finally came out. He wore jeans and a designer t-shirt, the tech billionaire uniform. He did not smile or greet me, just turned and walked toward his office. I followed. His office had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. The furniture was minimalist and expensive. Photos on the wall showed Trevor shaking hands with celebrities and politicians. He sat behind his desk and did not offer me a chair. "What is this about? I have a call in 20 minutes. I sat anyway, in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. "I need to talk to you about your company." His expression did not change. "What about it?" "I met with Margaret Hartwell yesterday, the woman who bid on me at the gala." Trevor rolled his eyes. "That was bizarre. Some old lady with too much money and not enough sense? Why would you meet with her?" "Because she told me some things. About your business practices." Now his face changed. His eyes narrowed. "What things?" I pulled out the folder Margaret had given me and set it on his desk. "She has been investigating your company. She knows the educational software does not work properly. She knows you are charging schools thousands for licenses, while spending almost nothing on actual development. She knows you are paying yourself millions, while the product fails students." Trevor did not touch the folder. His jaw tightened. "She has been spying on my company? She did due diligence before considering a partnership. That is normal business practice. What is not normal is defrauding schools and foundations." His face flushed red. "I am not defrauding anyone. We have a product. We sell it. If schools do not like it, they do not have to renew their contracts. But they cannot get out of the contracts early, can they? Even when the software does not work. You lock them in." Trevor stood up suddenly, his chair rolling backward. "You have no idea what you are talking about. You were a teacher in a public school. You do not understand how business works." "I understand right and wrong," I said quietly. "I understand that you told foundations you wanted to help low-income students, then spent their money on beach houses and sports cars." He slammed his hand on the desk. "This is what success looks like, Dad. I built an $80 million company from nothing. Me. Not you, with your pathetic teacher salary and your second-hand cars. I did this. And yeah, I made money. That is how capitalism works. By stealing from children? I am not stealing from anyone," he was shouting now. "Schools sign contracts, investors invest. That is business. Just because you were too pathetic to ever make real money does not mean I am doing anything wrong." The words hit me like physical blows. Too pathetic. My own son. I stood up, trying to keep my voice steady. "Trevor, Margaret is going to expose everything in less than 2 weeks. She has documentation. She is filing complaints with federal agencies. Your company will collapse. You could face criminal charges." His face went pale. "She cannot do that." "She can, and she will. Unless you act first. Resign. Make restitution to the schools you defrauded. Cooperate with investigations. Maybe you can avoid prison." Trevor stared at me for a long moment. Then he laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "You want me to destroy everything I built because some bitter old woman convinced you I am a criminal? I want you to take responsibility for what you have done." He walked around the desk, standing over me. "You are pathetic. You know that? You spent your whole life as a nobody, teaching bratty kids who forgot you the second they graduated. You lived in that tiny house, drove that piece of garbage car, wore the same ugly suits, and you think you have the right to judge me? I raised you," I said, my voice breaking. I gave you everything. I worked 2 jobs so you could go to Stanford. I sold the house your mother loved. I sacrificed everything so you could have opportunities. And I took those opportunities and made something of myself, he said coldly. That is more than you ever did. You stayed small your whole life. You were a mediocre teacher in a mediocre school, and now you are a lonely old man in a lonely house. Do not project your failures onto me. Every word was designed to hurt, and it worked. I felt tears on my face and hated myself for crying in front of him. I tried one more time. Trevor, please. You are heading down a path that will destroy you. Let me help you make this right. He leaned close, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. If you help that woman come after me, I will bury you. I have lawyers on retainer who cost more per hour than you made in a month. I have connections. I can make your life hell. Stay out of my business. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and realized I did not know this person. The boy I raised was gone, if he ever existed at all. I raised you to be better than this, I said quietly. Trevor smirked. No, you raised me to be poor and grateful for scraps. I had to teach myself how to actually succeed. And you know what? You are right. You did sacrifice everything for me. Your time, your money, your dignity, and I turned it into an empire. I won. You lost. That is the difference between us. He walked to his office door and opened it. We are done here. And Dad, do not come back. You are an embarrassment. I stood on shaking legs and walked past him. As I reached the door, he grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. If you side with her, you will regret it. I promise you that. I pulled my arm free and walked out without looking back. Behind me, I heard his office door slam. In the elevator, I let myself break down. I cried, for the son I lost, for the years I wasted, for the sacrifices that meant nothing. By the time I reached the lobby, the tears had stopped. I pulled out my phone and called Margaret. She answered immediately. Bart, did you speak with him? Yes, I told him everything. And? I took a deep breath. Do what you need to do. I will not protect him anymore. There was a pause. Are you certain? I am. He made his choices. Now, he lives with the consequences. I am sorry it came to this, she said gently. So am I. I hung up and walked out into the bright California sunshine, feeling like I had just buried my son. The next 2 weeks moved in slow motion. I flew back to Philadelphia and tried to return to normal life, but nothing felt normal. I kept replaying that confrontation in Trevor's office, hearing his cruel words over and over. You are an embarrassment. You lost. I won. I accepted Margaret's job offer. I signed the contract and started preparing for the new role. But even that excitement was tainted by grief. I was starting a new chapter of my life, while my relationship with my son ended. Margaret called me every few days with updates. Her team was finalizing their report. Journalists from major outlets had been briefed under embargo. Federal agencies were preparing their investigations. Everything was falling into place. Trevor called me 17 times that first week. I did not answer. He left voicemails that started angry, turned pleading, then angry again. The final message said simply, "You are dead to me." I deleted them all. On day 13, Margaret called. Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, we go public. The story will break simultaneously in the Wall Street Journal, TechCrunch, and on CNN. Are you prepared? As prepared as I can be, I said. Bart, she said carefully. This is going to be big. National news. Your name will likely come up as Trevor's father. Reporters may contact you. Are you ready for that? I thought about it. Yes, let them. I have nothing to hide. That night, I could not sleep. I sat in my small living room, looking at old photos of Trevor as a child. In every picture, he was smiling, blowing out birthday candles, playing in the snow. Graduating from 8th grade in a too-big suit, his face beaming with pride. When had he changed? Or had I just refused to see who he really was? At exactly 9 a.m. the next morning, my phone exploded. Texts from former colleagues, calls from reporters, news alerts flooding my screen. I turned on CNN. The chyron at the bottom read, Breaking news. Major tech firm accused of defrauding educational foundations. A reporter stood outside Trevor's office building. Behind her, people were already gathering, some holding signs that read, Shut down fraud and justice for students. The anchor's voice was grave. The Hartwell Educational Foundation released a bombshell report this morning, detailing what they call systematic fraud by Trevor Kaplan's educational software company, EduTech Solutions. According to the report, The company took in over $40 million from schools and foundations while delivering a substandard, barely functional product. The screen showed excerpts from the report, financial documents, screenshots of emails, including the one I had read, about sob stories and locked-in contracts. My phone rang. Martha, my sister. Bart, are you watching this? Yes. Oh my God. I cannot believe it. Trevor is all over the news. I know. Are you okay? I honestly do not know. The coverage continued all day. More details emerged. Investors were furious. Trevor's board called an emergency meeting. By noon, they forced him to resign as CEO. By 2 p.m., 3 major lawsuits had been filed. By 5 p.m., the FBI announced they were opening an investigation. I sat in my living room, numb, watching my son's empire crumble on live television. Day 2, the press found me. A reporter knocked on my door at 7 a.m. I did not answer. They called my phone. I blocked the numbers, but one managed to reach me on my sister's phone. Mr. Bart, this is Jennifer Walsh from the Philadelphia Inquirer. We are running a profile on Trevor Kaplan and wanted to get your perspective as his father. I have no comment. Did you know about your son's business practices? No, I did not. Reports say you were at a charity gala where he publicly humiliated you. Can you tell us about that? No comment. One more question. How do you feel about what your son did? I paused. Then, I said, I feel like I failed him, and that he failed himself. That is all I will say. I hung up. The next morning, the Inquirer ran a front-page story. The headline read, "Local Teacher's Son Falls from Grace." They included my quote, along with interviews from former students of mine who defended my character. One student, now a lawyer, said, "Mr. Bart was the best teacher I ever had. He believed in us when nobody else did. What his son became is not a reflection of him." The support from former students was overwhelming. Cards and letters arrived at my house. Emails filled my inbox. People I had not heard from in decades reached out to say they remembered me, that I had made a difference in their lives. But Trevor's voicemails turned vicious. "You ruined me. You destroyed everything. I hope you are happy, you bitter old man. I will never forgive you." I saved those voicemails, not to hurt him later, but to remember, to never forget what my son became when his mask finally fell. 3 weeks after the scandal broke, Trevor's company declared bankruptcy. Investors lost millions. Trevor himself faced over 30 civil lawsuits and multiple criminal investigations. His assets were frozen. His Malibu house was seized. His cars were repossessed. I felt no joy in his downfall, only sadness. Sadness for the boy he could have been. Sadness for the man he chose to become. I threw myself into my new job with the Hartwell Foundation. The work was fulfilling in ways I had forgotten were possible. I traveled to struggling school districts in Baltimore, Detroit, rural Mississippi. I met teachers who were doing heroic work with almost no resources. I helped design training programs, secured funding for classroom supplies, connected educators with mentors. One afternoon, I was in a 5th grade classroom in South Philadelphia, watching a young teacher lead a history lesson. The kids were engaged, asking questions, excited about learning. It reminded me why I became a teacher in the first place. After class, the teacher, a woman named Hannah, in her late 20s, approached me. "Thank you for being here. Your training program changed how I teach. The kids are actually learning now." I smiled. "You are doing the real work. I am just helping from the sidelines." She shook her head. "No. People like you are why people like me can succeed. You laid the groundwork." I thought about that conversation all evening. Trevor had spent years building a company that hurt students. I had spent 40 years helping them, one classroom at a time. My work was not glamorous or lucrative, but it mattered. It had always mattered. 6 months after the scandal broke, on a cold November afternoon, I was in my office at the foundation when my assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Bart, someone is here to see you. He says he is your son." My heart stopped. I stood up slowly. "Send him in." Trevor walked through the door, and I barely recognized him. He had lost weight. His clothes were ordinary, jeans and a plain jacket. No designer labels. His hair was unstyled. He looked exhausted. We stood there for a long moment, just looking at each other. Finally, I said, "Sit down." He sat in the chair across from my desk. I sat too. "Why are you here, Trevor?" He stared at his hands. "I came to say, I am sorry." The words hung in the air. "Sorry for what, specifically?" I asked. He looked up, and his eyes were red. "For everything. For the gala. For how I treated you. for what I did to those schools, for who I became. I said nothing, just waited. I lost everything, Dad. The company, the houses, the cars. Most of my friends disappeared the second the money was gone. I have been living in a studio apartment in Oakland, working as a software developer for a small firm that barely pays me enough to cover rent and legal fees. I am probably going to prison. My lawyers say I might get 3 to 5 years. His voice broke. And the worst part is, I deserve it. I deserve all of it. I was a terrible person. I hurt people. I hurt you. And I convinced myself it was okay. Because I was successful. But success built on lies is not real. You tried to teach me that my whole life, and I was too arrogant to listen. Tears ran down his face. I do not expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know that you were right. About everything. And I am sorry. I felt tears on my own face. I had imagined this moment, but now that it was here, I did not know what to say. Why now? I asked. Why are you saying this now? Because I finally understand what you tried to give me. It was not money or success. It was character, integrity, the ability to look at myself in the mirror and know I did right by people. I threw all of that away for things that did not matter. And now I have nothing. And I realized the only thing that ever mattered was the stuff I could not buy. He wiped his eyes. I have been doing community service as part of my plea deal. I work in public schools, helping teachers set up computers and basic software. Last week, I was in a classroom in East Oakland. The teacher, this amazing woman working with almost no budget, told her students that education was the key to everything, that it could change their lives. And one kid raised his hand and said his teacher in 5th grade told him the same thing, and it was true. He would not be in high school now if that teacher had not believed in him. Trevor looked at me. That is what you did, Dad. For 40 years, you changed lives. And I spent 6 years pretending my work was more important than yours, when the truth is, I did not do anything meaningful at all. I just took money from people and gave them nothing. I let the silence sit for a while. Then I said, you are right. You hurt a lot of people, including me, and saying sorry does not undo that damage. He nodded. I know. But, I continued, recognizing what you did wrong is the first step toward becoming better. The question is, what are you going to do now? He took a shaky breath. I am working with prosecutors. I am giving them everything. Names, documents, emails. I am testifying against the investors who knew the product was garbage but pushed me to sell it anyway. I am not trying to avoid responsibility, but I want to make sure everyone involved is held accountable, not just me. That is good, I said. And I am paying back every school I can. It will take years, maybe decades, but I am going to do it. Even if I go to prison, when I get out, I will keep paying back what I stole. Also good. He looked at me with desperate eyes. Do you think you could ever forgive me? I considered the question carefully. I do not know, Trevor. Forgiveness is not something I can decide right now. You broke my heart. You mocked everything I valued. You told me I was pathetic and that my life was worthless. Those words do not go away just because you are sorry now. He nodded, fresh tears falling. But, I continued, I can tell you this. I see that you are trying, and that matters. It does not fix everything, but it matters. Can we stay in contact? He asked quietly. I do not expect things to go back to normal. I just do not want to lose you completely. I thought about it. Yes, we can stay in contact. But it will take time to rebuild trust. And that is on you, not me. I understand. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Dad, one more thing. Yes? That gala night, when Margaret Hartwell bid $1 million for you, I realized something. You were worth more in that moment than I have ever been in my entire life. Not in money, in value. Real value. I am sorry it took me so long to see that. He left before I could respond. I sat in my office for a long time after he was gone, feeling something I had not felt in months. Not quite hope, but not despair either. Something in between. The following months unfolded like pages in a book I never wanted to read. Trevor's legal situation worsened before it got better. The federal fraud charges stuck. He pled guilty to wire fraud and securities violations as part of a deal with prosecutors. In exchange for his cooperation against other defendants, his sentence was reduced from a potential 12 years to 3.5 years in federal prison. I attended his sentencing hearing. It was held in a courthouse in San Francisco, a grand building with marble columns and the weight of justice hanging in the air. Trevor stood before the judge in a plain gray suit, looking small and broken. The judge, A stern woman in her 60s named Patricia Chen read through the charges and the plea agreement. Then she addressed Trevor directly. "Mr. Kaplan, you stole from institutions dedicated to helping the most vulnerable students in our society. You enriched yourself while children went without adequate educational resources. The harm you caused is immeasurable. However, I recognize that you have taken responsibility, cooperated with investigators, and shown genuine remorse. That matters under the law, even if it does not undo your crimes." She sentenced him to 42 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release and restitution, totaling $11 million. Trevor accepted the sentence without protest. As marshals led him away, he looked at me in the gallery. I nodded once. He nodded back. Then, he was gone. I walked out of that courthouse feeling strangely relieved. Justice had been served. Not perfectly, but served nonetheless. And Trevor was finally facing consequences. But my life was moving forward in ways I never expected. The work with the Hartwell Foundation consumed me in the best possible way. I traveled constantly, visiting schools, training teachers, developing curriculum. Every day brought new challenges and rewards. In Baltimore, I helped launch a mentorship program, connecting retired teachers with new educators in high-poverty schools. Within 6 months, teacher retention in those schools improved by 38%. In rural Mississippi, I worked with a district that had not updated their textbooks in 15 years. We secured funding for new materials and trained teachers on modern instructional methods. Student test scores jumped. In Detroit, I met a young teacher named Jerome, who was ready to quit after 2 years of fighting a broken system. We talked for hours about why he became a teacher, what he hoped to accomplish. By the end of our conversation, he decided to stay. A year later, he told me his classroom was the first place some of his students felt safe, that they were learning not just academics, but hope. Stories like Jerome's kept me going. They reminded me that teaching was never about money or recognition. It was about showing up, day after day, for kids who needed someone to believe in them. Margaret became not just my boss, but my friend. We had dinner once a month, talking about the foundation's work, but also about life. She was a widow herself, had lost her husband to a heart attack 12 years earlier. She understood grief and resilience. One evening over Italian food in Philadelphia, she told me, "You know, when I bid that $1 million at the gala, I was not entirely sure why I was doing it. I just knew your son was wrong and you deserved better. But hiring you turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made. You have transformed our teacher training program." I shook my head. "You gave me a second act when I thought my life was over. I should be thanking you." She smiled. "Then, let us agree. We both benefited. We raised our glasses and toasted to second chances." My former students continued to reach out. Social media made it easy for them to find me. I heard from a student I taught in 1992 who was now a principal in Harrisburg, using methods I taught him to reform his school. A student from 2004, who became a historian, writing books about the Civil War, sent me an autographed copy with an inscription, "You taught me to love history. Thank you for everything." These messages meant more to me than any award or salary ever could. Trevor wrote to me from prison. His letters arrived every few weeks, handwritten on lined paper. The first few were full of apologies and self-recrimination. Then, they started to change. He wrote about his fellow inmates, many of whom were there for nonviolent offenses, victims of a system that punished poverty as much as crime. He started teaching a GED prep course in the prison, helping men who never finished high school. In one letter, he wrote, "Dad, I am teaching math to a guy named Carlos, who dropped out in 9th grade, to support his family. Yesterday, he passed his practice test. When he saw his score, he cried. I never understood what you felt in the classroom until now. This is real. This matters. Everything I did before was empty." I wrote back, telling him I was proud of the work he was doing. I did not say I forgave him, that was still too raw. But I acknowledged his growth. Months turned into a year. Then 18 months, I settled into a routine. Work during the week, visiting schools and running training sessions. Weekends I spent in my garden, reading, occasionally having dinner with former colleagues. My life was quiet but fulfilling. Then, on a Tuesday morning in spring, almost 2 years after the scandal broke, I received a phone call from an unknown California number. I answered cautiously. "Hello? Dad, it is Trevor." His voice sounded different, steadier, more mature. "Trevor, how are you calling me? I got approved for a work release program. I am out during the day, working at a nonprofit that helps schools implement technology correctly. I have to go back to the facility at night, but this is huge, Dad. I am actually helping people. That is wonderful, I said, and I meant it. I wanted to tell you something. The nonprofit I am working for, they offered me a full-time job after my release. It does not pay much, maybe a tenth of what I used to make, but it is real work. Honest work. I am helping schools avoid the mistakes I made. I felt pride swell in my chest. I am glad, Trevor. Truly. There was a pause. Then he said, Dad, I know I do not have the right to ask this, but when I get out in 6 months, can I come visit you? In Philadelphia? I want to see where you work. I want to understand your life the way I never did before. I thought about it, about the pain he caused, about the growth I had seen in his letters, about second chances and redemption. Yes, I said, you can visit. His relief was audible. Thank you. I promise I will not let you down again. We will see, I said, but I'm willing to give you a chance. After we hung up, I sat in my office, looking out at the Philadelphia skyline. The city where I spent my entire career. The city where I raised my son alone. The city where I was building something meaningful again. 6 months later, Trevor was released. He moved into a halfway house in Oakland and started his job at the nonprofit. True to his word, he asked for permission to visit me. On a Saturday in October, he arrived at my house. He took the train from California, could not afford a plane ticket. When I opened the door, we stood there awkwardly for a moment. Then he stepped forward and hugged me. I hugged him back. Over the next 2 days, I showed him my life. We visited the Hartwell Foundation offices. I introduced him to Margaret, who was polite but cautious. We went to Lincoln High School, where I taught for so many years. The principal, a former student of mine, gave us a tour. Trevor saw my old classroom, now occupied by a young teacher who was using some of my lesson plans. That evening, we had dinner at a diner near my house. Nothing fancy, just burgers and fries. Trevor looked around the simple restaurant and said, "This is nice." "It is just a diner," I said. "No, I mean it. This is real. No pretense. Just good food and honest conversation." We ate in comfortable silence for a while. Then Trevor said, "I have been thinking a lot about that night at the Gala when I put you on stage and tried to humiliate you." I set down my burger. "What about it?" "I thought I was proving something, that I was better than you because I had money and success, but I was really just showing everyone how broken I was inside, how insecure, how terrified that deep down I was not good enough." "You were good enough," I said quietly. "You always were. You just had to learn to measure yourself by the right standards." He nodded, eyes glistening. When Margaret bid that $1 million, something broke in me. I stood there on that stage, and I realized everyone was looking at her like she was a hero, and looking at me like I was garbage, and they were right. "That moment was a gift," I said. "A painful gift, but a gift. It showed you the truth." Trevor wiped his eyes. "I wasted so many years, Dad. I could have been working alongside you, helping people. Instead, I hurt them." "You cannot change the past," I said, "but you can choose the future. That is what you are doing now." He looked at me with an expression I had not seen in years. Gratitude. Real, unguarded gratitude. "Do you think Mom would be proud of who I am becoming?" he asked. I thought about Sarah, her kindness, her belief that everyone deserved a second chance. "Yes," I said. "She would be heartbroken about your mistakes, but proud that you are trying to fix them. That is all she ever wanted for you, to be a good man." We finished our dinner and walked back to my house under streetlights. It was not perfect. Our relationship would take years to fully heal. But it was a start. 2 years after that visit, I am 72 years old. I still work part-time for the Hartwell Foundation, though at a reduced schedule. My days of constant travel are mostly behind me, but I mentor young program directors and occasionally visit schools for special projects. Trevor is 40 years old now. He lives in a modest apartment in Oakland and works full-time at the nonprofit. He earns $45,000 a year, a fraction of his old salary, but he is genuinely happy. He helps schools implement technology ethically and effectively. He trains teachers. He writes grants to secure funding for underserved districts. Last month, he called me with news. The nonprofit promoted him to director of their West Coast operations. With the new role came a responsibility: overseeing partnerships with foundations that fund educational technology, including the Hartwell Foundation. "Dad," he said, his voice full of nervous energy, "this means I might work on projects with Margaret." with your foundation. Is that going to be weird? I smiled. Only if you make it weird. Margaret has been following your progress. She knows you have changed. If she is willing to work with you, then you have earned that trust back. I hope so, he said. I do not want to let anyone down. Especially you. You will not, I said. Just keep doing what you are doing. We see each other every few months now. Sometimes he flies to Philadelphia. Sometimes I visit California. We have dinner at simple places, diners and neighborhood restaurants. We talk about his work, my work, the students whose lives are changing because of good teachers and honest programs. Our relationship is not what it was when he was young. That innocence is gone. But it is real now, in a way it never was before. We see each other clearly, without illusions. Last month, Trevor attended one of my teacher training seminars in San Francisco. He sat in the back, watching me lead a discussion about reaching struggling students. After the session, several teachers approached him, not knowing who he was, and told him how much my work had impacted them. One teacher, a young woman from Oakland, said, "Mr. Bart changed my entire approach to teaching. I was ready to quit. His program saved my career, and through me, it saved my students." Trevor listened, nodding. Then he said, "He saved me too." After everyone left, we walked through the city together. Trevor stopped on a bridge overlooking the bay and turned to me. "That night at the gala, when I tried to sell you for $1, I thought I was the successful one, the winner. I had money and power, and you had nothing. You had character," he continued. "You had purpose. You had the respect of people whose respect actually mattered, and I had nothing real at all, just expensive things that meant nothing." We stood there watching the sun set over the water. "I have thought about Margaret's $1 million bid a lot," Trevor said. "Do you know why it was such a perfect number?" "Why?" I asked. "Because it proved that your worth could not be measured. $1 million was absurd for a dinner auction, but it made the point. You were priceless, and I was trying to sell you for $1. He turned to me, tears on his face. "I am so sorry, Dad, for everything, for not seeing your value, for wasting so many years, being someone Mom would have been ashamed of, for hurting you and so many others. I am sorry." I put my hand on his shoulder. "I forgive you, Trevor. I should have said it sooner, but I am saying it now. I forgive you." We hugged there on that bridge, father and son, both broken in different ways, both healing. Today, I sit in my small backyard garden in Philadelphia. The tomatoes are coming in nicely. My neighbor's cat visits most afternoons, curling up on the warm stones. I have a stack of letters from former students on my patio table, including one from a girl I taught in 2001, who just became superintendent of schools in Trenton, New Jersey. She credited my teaching with inspiring her career. I pick up a photo of Sarah that I keep on the outdoor shelf. I tell her about Trevor, about his transformation, about the work he is doing now. I think she would be proud. Heartbroken about the path he took, but proud of where he ended up. I think about that gala night, standing on stage, under blinding lights, while my son mocked me. I think about Margaret's calm voice, cutting through the laughter. "I will bid $1 million. I think about everything that followed. The investigation, the collapse, the prison sentence, the slow, painful rebuilding. People sometimes ask me if I regret how things happened, if I wish I had protected Trevor from the consequences. No, I tell them. The best thing I ever did was let him fall, because only after hitting bottom could he learn to stand on his own." The Hartwell Foundation's teacher training program has now reached over 300 districts nationwide. We have trained more than 4,000 teachers. Those teachers impact roughly 60,000 students every year. The ripple effect of that work is immeasurable. Trevor's nonprofit has helped over 100 schools implement ethical, effective technology programs. Students in those schools are learning, growing, succeeding. The work is not glamorous. It will never make headlines, but it is real and it matters. Last week, Trevor sent me a letter. He wrote, "Dad, I was teaching a workshop for teachers in East Oakland yesterday. One teacher raised her hand and said she had a student who was failing everything, acting out, seemed completely lost. She asked what to do, and I told her what you told me once, that every student who acts like they do not care is really just scared, that underneath the anger or apathy is a kid who needs someone to believe in them." The teacher started crying. She said nobody ever taught her that. I told her my father taught me, and even though I forgot it for a long time, I never really lost it. Thank you for planting seeds that took decades to grow. I folded that letter carefully and added it to the box where I keep his correspondence. proof of transformation, proof that people can change if they are willing to do the hard work. As I sit here in my garden, the afternoon sun warm on my face, I think about the life I have lived. 40 years in the classroom, raising a son alone, losing that son to greed and arrogance, getting him back, slowly, painfully, building a second career that lets me help thousands of teachers and students. I was never rich. I never had power or fame. By the world's standards, especially Trevor's old world, I was boring and insignificant. But Margaret saw my worth. My former students saw my worth. And eventually, finally, Trevor saw it too. True wealth is not measured in dollars or status symbols. It is measured in the lives you touch, the integrity you maintain, and the courage to stay true to your values, even when others mock them. The greatest inheritance you can leave is not money, but character. The greatest success is not climbing above others, but lifting them up alongside you. I learned that lesson slowly, over many years. Trevor learned it the hard way, through loss and consequences. But we both learned it, and that, in the end, is enough. I close my eyes and feel the sun on my face, smell the tomatoes growing beside me, hear children laughing in a neighbor's yard. This is success, this quiet moment, this simple life, this knowledge that my work mattered and still matters. I am at peace. Now, I want to ask you something, and I hope you will take a moment to share your thoughts. Have you ever felt undervalued by someone you sacrificed everything for? Maybe a family member, a friend, or someone you mentored? How did you handle it? Did you walk away? Or did you stay and fight for the relationship? Leave your answer in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories help others who might be going through something similar. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories and reminds us all that we are not alone in our struggles. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because I share new stories every week about real people facing real challenges and finding their way through. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who feels invisible or undervalued, please share this story with them. Sometimes we all need a reminder that our worth is not determined by how others treat us, but by who we choose to be when no one is watching. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about, maybe even something to hold on to when times get hard. Remember that your value is not measured in dollars or applause. It is measured in kindness, integrity, and the quiet difference you make in the lives around you. Take care of yourselves, believe in your worth, and never let anyone convince you that a simple, honest life is worth less than a flashy, hollow one. Until next time,